Smarties, today we are discussing the final step of taking an exam, which is the post-exam analysis. In this episode, we share how we view this process and what questions we ask and why. And of course, we are also excited to share another freebie, another free resource with all of you. If you are interested in working with either one of our practices, do not hesitate to sign up for our phone call. They are free, and usually you get to chat with one of us. So you can sign up for a phone call on my website, which is www.kappedtherapy.com. That's K as in kite. And my practice specializes in learners 5th grade through adulthood who are struggling with executive functioning skills challenges. We are virtual exclusively. And Steph's practice is M.Ed Her practice does all the things, and they offer both in-person and virtual sessions. And the in-person sessions take place in Redondo Beach, California and Manhattan Beach, California. Let's dig in.
You want to learn faster, but sometimes working harder is just not the answer. You have to learn smarter. The Educational Therapy Podcast.
Hi, Smarties. Welcome to episode 340 of Learn Smarter, the Educational Therapy Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pitts.
And I'm Rachel Kapp.
And today we're talking about tests.
So this is one that's been on our list for a while. And as we were breaking down this episode, we always like to come up with a little maybe mini framework for each episode.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about it and we realized we can't believe we got into 340 episodes without discussing this crucial step of studying. I mean, studying was such an important idea to us early on that it's like episode 3 and 4 of this podcast. Obviously, it's been revisited multiple times over the last 5 years, 6 years we've been podcasting.
I don't even know.
Geez. As I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, it's time for another spa day. So we'll have that conversation off air. But for those who haven't been a longtime listener of the podcast, usually when Steph and I hit milestones of either years or like milestone numbers of episodes, we're 10 episodes away from 350, which means we got to plan a spa day. That's what we do on those days to celebrate. If you have a big project that you are working on long term, make sure you plan in those like moments to acknowledge the effort and what you've accomplished. Right, Steph?
Right, exactly. Always.
I think the reason she took a second to respond is she's like, where am I going to get a water treatment? I think that's where her brain went of like...
Always the water treatment, and why are they going away?
Because it can get gross in there. That's why.
All right, fine.
Okay. So we have so many episodes where we talk about how to prepare. We don't really have a lot of episodes on how to teach learners while they're in the test-taking environment. So that's something we will loop back on. But we wanted to do this episode on what to do after an exam, because we're going out of order here. And that's sometimes what happens in the real world. So, Steph, what are your sort of initial thoughts?
We get so wrapped up in things coming at the kids just left and right, and they're just struggling to stay afloat. And that sometimes it feels very hard to stop and reflect and think about how we can do it differently next time. Because I know a lot of times it's like quicksand, just keep your head above, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think when there are times, especially when there are breaks from school, this is a great opportunity to really reflect and think about what worked and what didn't and how we can do things differently.
And it's really our job as the ed therapist to guide those questions and the thoughtfulness around this, because as evidenced by the fact that it took us 340 episodes to get to this idea, there are so many things that come up first. Life is coming at you so fast that it can be difficult to structure in a moment of pause and a moment of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as educational therapists, where we are striving to demystify the learning profile and we want to include metacognition in our sessions and helping learners really understand who they are and how they interact with the world. This is a really important component. We don't want it to be too long. That's the other thing.
Yeah, it can't take too much time. Yeah.
It cannot take too much time. It has to be quick. It has to be yes or no. And then what do we do? So if you're having these conversations with learners, and I'll just skip to the end right now, we've created a freebie alongside this episode that if you're on our email list, you will have received this morning or the morning that the episode airs. And we intentionally designed these questions first to be flexible, and you don't have to do all of them. You can pick a couple or whatever, but they're all yes or no questions. We are not looking for long explanations because that's not immediately an option for a lot of the learners that we work with. If we're asking them why, they sometimes don't know, and that becomes a roadblock, that becomes a bottleneck in preventing progress and preventing further conversation. Sometimes it's our job to know why, or it's our job to know where to go to get curious about one specific thing that they shared. But quick yes or no's can help this process go quicker.
For sure. I think that we need to break it up, the fact that there's before the exam, and we have some episodes 3 and 4, the do's and don'ts of studying and creating a study plan. So that's before. Then there's actually taking the test, and then we're talking about after.
You'll notice a lot of the times when we're talking about these big concepts, you'll hear us using chronology as a natural framework. We do it a lot, but it's a really simple way of thinking about something that everybody has a relationship with before and after.
For sure. The kids know.
The kids know.
Yeah.
So let's dig into sort of the 5 steps. And remember, whenever we give ideas like this, we are inviting our audience, parents and learning support specialists and educational therapists and people who have interests, teachers, to iterate and do what makes sense in their own environment. If we just make the impact of having a post-exam conversation with a learner, that's a total win.
For sure. I mean, listen, there's a lot of shame sometimes if they don't do well or as well as they thought they did, or they studied a lot and felt like they didn't show off what they knew. So there's a lot of shame, and they don't even necessarily want to tell you what grade they got, or they don't want to look at it because they have so much shame themselves. So just reminding everyone, this is an important part of the process because you have to learn from your mistakes.
And you can pick an exam where they did well.
100%.
If this isn't something that you've done in the past, start with a win. Start with an exam that they feel good about so they can start understanding and having a relationship with this component, because that will help when there isn't a moment. They have familiarity. They're not like, oh, Rachel's making me do this because I didn't do well.
Right.
No, Rachel is making me do this because we always do this. We always ask these types of questions. We always have these conversations. Okay, so Steph, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so the first thing is, let's start with having a growth mindset. A great way to do this is exactly what Rachel said. Use an exam that they did well on, that they're proud of themselves, that you need to have a growth mindset and you really need to have reflection no matter what the actual grade is. It's about the process, not the product.
Perfect. And then the next step is review it together. Take a look at it together. It doesn't have to take long. Sometimes you get the option of test corrections, but taking a look just overall and talking through it overall, like just take the global approach initially and have that moment of reflection. And then number 3
is reviewing the studying process. How did it go up until then? How did they chunk it? What did they actually study? How did they study? These are all the things. What did they do leading into that particular test?
And then number 4 is, what are the areas of growth? But maybe you just start with, what are the areas of wins? Where did they have wins? Where did they show improvement? And then the plan.
Number 5 is the plan.
I love the idea of documenting a plan. But again, I think when we do these types of things, there's a real tendency to overcomplicate, overwrite, over explore. and like beat a dead horse, frankly.
Yeah.
So you want to be mindful of, first and foremost, self-concept, self-esteem, and growth mindset in these conversations.
It doesn't need to be a multiple step plan.
No.
We were talking about micro wins recently.
Yep.
And I think that that's one of the things that you need to take into account for the plan. So what worked, what didn't, and maybe you just have a small change in the plan if that's what it needs to be. Because creating a whole new regimen or routine for a reluctant learner is not going to work.
You're asking too much.
Yeah.
So ask what is appropriate at the age and stage of the learners that you're working with. Be respectful of how long you've had this relationship with them, because it's extremely vulnerable and it can quickly go to shame. And if they're predisposed to shame or they are showing up already feeling ashamed, be mindful about how you're introducing this idea. So we created this worksheet. Guys, there are 8 sections. Use what you want, use what makes sense, use what is mindful and respectful of the learner that you're working with. And here are the 8 sections, and there's questions of each kind. They're all yes or no's, but don't feel like you have to put your learner through all of them. Be like, yeah, just skip that this time. That's not our focus right now. And they love it when we eliminate work from them, by the way.
For sure.
So the 8 sections are confidence and preparation, time management, areas of struggle, mistakes and errors, study habits, wins and successes, post-exam analysis, and next steps and improvement. If you are focused only on what do we want to do differently next time, then pick those sections that give you the data and spark the conversation. Use this as a tool for sparking conversations with your learners, and then remind them of it the next time that they have a test. Don't just drop it. Keep that a part of your routine. So if you're doing red light, green light, add that in somehow into red light, and listen to those earlier episodes if you don't know what we're talking about. It's our study hack. It's one of the favorite things that we do with learners in terms of preparing them for studying. But figure out a way to incorporate that idea. The reason red light, green light works is because it's fast, it's quick, it's connected to something that they likely already have experience with. So you can add in one step there, but we don't want to be adding in 8 different things that they need to be doing better, because they will do none of them. They will feel shame, and it's too much. We're causing overwhelm. So how do we iterate in a way that shows improvement for the next time?
I just think that this is a wonderful tool, and pick and choose, even if it's just one question.
With that, have a great week, Smarties.
Have a great week, Smarties.